Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with your girl Stephanie Hardy. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. If this is your first time listening, welcome to my crazy world. And if this isn't your first time listening, thank you for continuing on this journey with me as I chart what's going on in the world of professional wrestling. So, per usual, I have your news and gossip-ish. There's a lot going on this week, but it's all pretty good stuff going on. A lot of mushy stuff, but it's all good. I also have a special interview and conversation with Revolt Pro Wrestling and Pro Wrestling Movement's very own referee, commentator, and ring announcer, Devin Christianson. And I have a weekly recap of Raw, NXT, AEW, and SmackDown, but it's going to be a little bit different because I was able to watch some of NXT, but not all of it. But then I was also able to watch a little bit of AEW as well. But I also had something else to recap as well in terms of me having a great conversation with a couple of my wrestling podcasting friends that I do want to talk about in terms of Survivor Series. We had a little bit of a Survivor Series block party that will air on Facebook Live on Thanksgiving Day. So if you want to check that out, please do. And I'm going to talk more about it later on in the segment. So sit back, relax, and listen to this amazing episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast, your favorite chill, positive, and passionate vibe. All right, so we're going to start with this news and gossip-ish. So we're going to start by talking about Alexa Bliss and Ryan Cabrera getting engaged this past weekend. We're going to send a congratulations to them for that, first of all, because this is a podcast that believes in love. And this couple has been really cute, over the past year. They got together, they started talking to each other like last year, and just this weekend they posted about how he proposed to her. It looked like in a private restaurant or something. It looked like they were either outside or inside a private restaurant or something like that. But it looked like in the video that they both posted on Instagram that he was saying something really sweet to her, and then she starts, sort of crying, and then he gets down on one knee and proposes to her, and she, of course, says yes. So congratulations to them. Ryan Cabrera, if you know or may not know, is a rock singer. I would say probably an icon at this point, in the rock atmosphere, and he was really happy to be in a relationship with somebody like her. And he said the following about being in a relationship with someone like her, and it was just super sweet. He basically said, "I am the luckiest man in the world. I'm going to marry the kindest, sweetest, funniest, most thoughtful, brilliant woman I have ever met in my life. The only other woman I know that has the exact same qualities as my mother, who is perfect in my eyes. The best day I have ever had in my 38 years on this planet to date. I love you always and forever, Lex. People will always have their opinions, but love, in all caps, will always conquer, and that's how I choose to live my life." And that was just so sweet. So congratulations to them for being engaged. And really all Alexa Bliss, responded with was, "I love you." And that was just really sweet. Also, in the rumor mill for the whole gossip-ish component, there's a rumor from Ringside News that Aaliyah, Mysterio, and Murphy are supposed to be having a wedding on SmackDown at some point because, of course, you have that storyline that trickled over onto SmackDown from Raw when they got moved during the draft, where Murphy was getting close to Seth Rollins and now has started a rivalry with him, and they also decided to go all in on the love story between Aaliyah, Mysterio, and Murphy, who's now gained acceptance into the Mysterios family. And now what they're, insinuating is the fact that maybe somewhere down the line they're going to tease or possibly do a WWE wedding where maybe he might turn on the family, but who knows? I hope he doesn't turn on the family, simply because of the fact that he just got in their good graces, and it would kind of make no sense for him to turn on them when he just turned on Seth. And they actually had a stellar match tonight on SmackDown, by the way, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. But it would kind of make no sense for him to turn on the Mysterio family after he just earned their good graces. Plus, not to mention, I do want to see a wedding. Since they're going all in on this couple thing, I do kind of want to see a wedding between them, because I just love WWE weddings. In fact, I just love weddings, period. I feel like the least favorite wedding that WWE's had that I didn't like was just between Lana and Bobby Lashley. That wedding was absolute trash. That was a whole lot. It was like a dumpster fire of trash, and I don't normally like calling stuff trash, but that really was kind of hard to look at. But every other WWE wedding I've tended to enjoy. So it's been a while since we've seen one of those, so I would really love to see a hot mess WWE wedding take place on TV. Also in the news, we had Becky Lynch share her maternity photos with Seth Rollins on her Instagram. And she only shared it with the caption, "coming soon." But if you look in the picture, you see all of her orange hair has been sort of grown out, more for her brunette style, which is absolutely gorgeous. It looks like a mixture of brunette and blonde. And she had lots of beautiful clothes on by this black female designer. And someone, tweeted about it, and I thought it was really cool that she did that. Because she had on this beautiful lacy red dress while Seth Rollins kind of had on these suits or whatever. But they looked really beautiful. They looked happy. They looked in love. And she looks like she is about to have this baby, any day now. So again, big congratulations to them and their, growing family. It's going to be really cool. So I'm pretty sure at some point Seth is going to have to, take a break from television to be there and support, Becky as she prepares to give birth. But I do recommend you do go on Instagram and see these pictures because they are absolutely stunning and gorgeous. Also, in terms of baby news, Jon Moxley, who used to be Dean Ambrose in WWE but is now the AEW World Champion, and his wife Renee Paquette, otherwise known as Renee Young from WWE, is expecting a baby as well. And he announced it on AEW during his promo on AEW Dynamite. And Renee said on Twitter that she wasn't initially planning on, it coming out on television, but since he came out with it there, she decided to go ahead and, go with the idea of them, discussing it and revealing it now more so than later. So congratulations to them. It just seems like there's just so much love and baby fever in the air. And I think they're going to make the coolest parents ever. So congratulations to them. There's so much love in the air. Also in the news, we have the New Day and how they announced that they've been featured in the video game Gears of War. I am not the biggest video game person. I'm only exposed to as much video game stuff from my boyfriend because he's a gamer, but he's never really played Gears of War around me. But I saw this on the New Day, on each member of the New Day's Instagram accounts, where they talked about how they're featured as characters in the game, and it seemed like the armor that they was wearing was definitely colorful, like a lot of their outfits are, and it had their faces, superimposed, upon these characters, and they looked amazing. And plus, not to mention, they have merchandise that they're selling that has those characters on there as well. So it seems like there's really truly nothing that the New Day can't do at this point, along with facing the Street Profits at Survivor Series this Sunday. They're featured in video games. They're doing all kinds of stuff for the NAACP and raising money for police reform and stuff like that with their t-shirts for their protest on SmackDown a couple months ago. And of course there's Up, Up, Down, Down. It just seems like there is absolutely nothing that the New Day can't do. And I feel like they should be considered one of the best factions, if not the best faction, or one of the most successful factions in the entire history of wrestling, period. I saw a picture floating around on Facebook talking about, should they be considered the greatest faction in WWE history? And a lot of people said no, but I would argue maybe they should be, considered in a top 5, if you can think of any that could be in a top 5. So, because you really just can't, erase their success as a whole. Like, you really just can't overlook it, and it's just, they just do so much inside of wrestling and outside of wrestling that just matters. And they represent, they represent a bunch of black, people or black men who are into so many different things, not even just in wrestling, but also in video gaming and stuff like that. And also just in regular, and also representing black culture as well. So congratulations to the New Day on every bit of success that they're going to get and that they're continuously getting even now. And lastly, we have, well, actually not lastly, because I have one more story to talk about after this one. WWE won an award for their no makeup photo shoot. So if you remember, a couple of months ago, I talked about how some of the WWE female superstars got together and did this photo shoot where a lot of them had no makeup on. It was Bianca Belair, it was Dana Brooke, Rhea Ripley, Carmella, Io Shirai, Ruby Riott, and Sasha Banks, I believe Charlotte as well. They participated in this photo shoot where they were all, barefaced with no makeup. And I talked about in one of my episodes how it's a great representation of, not falling under the beauty standards that, so many women feel like they face, on a regular basis. Well, for this photo shoot, WWE won a Best in Sports Awards at the Shorty Social Good Awards. So congratulations to them for that, because that was just a really nice photo shoot. So if you want to go back or Google those pictures, I really suggest that you do, because it's like, you see these women get glammed up on television all the time with all their various looks, but it's definitely different to see these women without makeup, because you're able to see them, as, regular women, every day, who, just like me, don't necessarily wear makeup or have a beat face or whatever, but yet you show up in the world, as you are, and to show the beauty of as you are, without anything extra. So that was really cool. And also, to tie into beauty standards, Jade Cargill, who made her debut on AEW two weeks ago, she was in an interview on the AEW podcast with Tony Schiavone and Aubrey Edwards, who's a referee in AEW, and she talked about how Chyna, the Hall of Famer in the WWE, was inspirational, to her as someone trying to embrace the muscles on her body. She basically sat down on the AEW Unrestricted podcast and talked about Chyna empowering her and giving her more confidence. And she was quoted by saying, "Growing up, I've always been muscular, and I used to always get picked on by guys saying, 'Oh, she looks like a man, she's too muscular.' And I remember growing up and watching Chyna and seeing how she just embodied and just loved how she looked. And it just did nothing but empower me and make me say, you know what? I look good. These muscles look great." And I thought this was really poignant of her to say, because the first time I saw Jade a couple weeks ago, I thought she was absolutely stunning looking. Like, she looked like a beautiful chocolate doll. And I just couldn't stop staring at her, because not only was she beautiful in the face, just like her entire body is just, carved to perfection with all the muscles that she has. And she still very, very much looks, feminine. But with you being on television and being a woman, if you have almost as many muscles or more muscles than a dude, a lot of dudes will say ignorant things, and say, "Oh, you look like a man," and, "Oh, I'm pretty sure you had, some type of surgery to make you look like a woman, but deep down inside you're a man." And that's the most ignorant thing you could ever say, because number one, it makes you seem like you're not as understanding of women looking a different sort of way other than what you feel like they should look like. And number two, it also shows that you're threatened. You could very well be threatened by someone or a woman who is just as athletic, if not more athletic than you. And then third of all, it gives off the impression that you might not be as sensitive to people who might have had surgery to transition into something that they feel that they are inside. And I am a pro do whatever makes you feel happy person. So whenever you say stuff like that to come off as a bully, or you make a woman feel like how she looks naturally or athletically isn't good enough, then that makes you a different type of trash person, and you really need to sit down and shut up. Like, I almost went there, but you really just need to just shut up and just leave people alone and let women be who they are. And if they're muscular, then let them be beautiful and muscular. And if they're athletic, let them be beautiful and athletic. How about you just, take it as inspiration to do better in your own life, as opposed to just tearing people down? And that's all I really have to say about that. And I wish nothing but success for Jade Cargill, because she is tearing it up on AEW, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later as well. And I talked about it on my last episode too. I really like Jade Cargill. She's cool. And that's the end of News and Gossip-ish. And now we're going to go to our interview with wrestling ring announcer, referee, and commentator Devin Christianson. Welcome to the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. It's good to have you.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to start by asking you the question that I ask all of my guests that come on my show. And that's, when did you fall in love with wrestling?
Well, for me, I think it really started back when I was a little child sitting in front of this old tube television. A lot of people don't know what the tube television is. It's those TVs had rabbit ears attached to them, and you tuned the channel on you didn't have a remote control. You had these two little knobs on the TV, and you had to tune it, and you had to change the channel. All my older folks are going to understand, and the younger people are going to be like, what the hell is he talking about?
Wow.
I used to sit in front of that television and watch wrestlers like Paul Orndorff, Hulk Hogan, Iron Sheik, Andre the Giant. And I think I was about maybe 4 or 5 at the time. That was when I first started watching wrestling. But I think at the point in time when I really thought to myself, hey, I would love to be in this industry, was when back in the 90s, in the late 80s to early 90s, when I was watching Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart. Shawn Michaels was my absolute favorite at the time. And I just fell in love with the sport at that time. And I thought to myself, well, I've got to find a way into this business. And so that was really the start for me.
Okay, I think it's really cool that you mentioned Shawn Michaels, because he's actually one of my favorites as well. Like, he is absolutely phenomenal.
He is an inspiration for so many. If you look at, and I hate that it is overused in the industry today, but I love the fact that it's kind of like honoring him. But there are just so many people out there using a variant of the super kick, or sweet chin music, as Sean called it.
Yeah.
And it's throughout. Oh, I don't know if you heard that. But there's so many people using some sort of variant of his finish. I think it's overused today. To an extent, we see it in just about every single wrestling match you watch, but it's because so many people grew up loving and watching Shawn Michaels.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Like, yeah, it's just the fact, I think it's just a testament to his overall impact on the sport as a whole. And plus, he just seems like an amazing person as well. So I think I'll just always admire him in his, greatness in the ring, but also just his greatness as a person and how he's evolved and stuff. So I want to ask you, what exactly happened in your life to make you sort of pursue it as a career going forward?
Well, I've always loved it, but I'd say about this journey for me kind of started about four years ago, when I was at a wrestling event, and I was doing photography for other things and working in film and television. And I went to a wrestling show with a buddy of mine who's a stuntman in films. He invited me out to a wrestling show with a friend of mine who ran a promotion, or a friend of his that ran a promotion. And I went to the show, and I really enjoyed it. And it was a local promotion, and I enjoyed it. And I decided, you know what? I just want to take some photos of the event. And, I gave that memory card to the promoter. I did a little editing on the photos, gave it to him. And then I really started my journey kind of inward towards working in this business by just doing photos. I wasn't, and it's kind of funny because I remember a story similar to this one when it comes to Paul Heyman. And he talked about being a photographer. And that's how I got my start. I was not a licensed photographer. I was not somebody who was paid or hired to be there. I was just someone who loved the sport and did it for the boys and the girls or the boys and the women in the locker room. And that's why I did it, and that's how I got my real start into this business.
Okay, so in terms of, you did mention how you sort of got into it with photography. So how exactly did you get into ring announcing and also refereeing and commentating as well as that? Because it seems like you're incredibly well-rounded and you can run or probably do a whole show yourself with all of that experience.
Well, it's funny because it all started with actually an argument and a fight. Not like a fist fight, but kind of like a disagreement to an extent with another photographer. I was working a show, actually paid to work a show with another photographer. He and I developed a pretty good relationship, and we would travel from show to show to show. Well, this particular time, now I had a photo printer, one of those Canon photo printers, right? The little portable. Mm-hmm. So he's trying to reach the promoter, and I'm trying to get into contact with the promoter about getting my, what do we need? How much more photo paper do I need? How much more ink do I need? And the promoter calls me back instead of calling the other photographer back, which apparently was an ego thing for the other photographer. He did not like that. He did not appreciate that instead of the promoter reaching out to him, who's been doing this a lot longer than me, the promoter reached out to me, which in all fairness, it was my equipment. So nobody's going to be able to talk to them about what I need to buy for my equipment except for me. Mm-hmm. So he got upset about that. Well, later on during the show, I'm doing printing of photos that we took earlier the night. We did in-ring photos with wrestlers, and we print them up, and then we would give them to the fans who would buy them. So I get word from the locker room, from one of the boy locker room, that the other photographers in the locker room talking, I don't know if you can curse on here, but I'm not going to do it, talking crap about he was talking crap about me in the locker room, and I found out about that, and it really ticked me off. So I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to worry about it. I'm just going to do my thing. I'm going to sell my merch. And I was working his merch table. That's the funny thing. As a photographer, he had some merch, some photos and things he was selling. I had some masks and things I was selling. So at that very moment, I decided I am no longer going to help him by selling his merchandise. So I'm at his table with my merchandise, doing my thing. We also had another guy there who was doing commentary, who's a friend of ours. So I get this word, our friend who's doing commentary decides, now he does independent commentary, it wasn't for the promotion. So he asked me, he said, hey, how about you do commentary with me for a couple matches? So I said, sure. So we do one match of commentary. I did color commentary. He did play-by-play commentary. We played really well off of each other, I felt. And I did very well, I felt, as far as what I did with what limited knowledge I had for the night. Mm-hmm. I did one match. It was Gold Dog versus Golden Simon Phillips at Pro Wrestling 225. And I did the commentary, and then they went to intermission. When they went to intermission, the other photographer starts talking to the commentator, and we all wrote in together. So next thing you know, the commentator is telling me, hey, bud, he doesn't want me doing commentary with you. He doesn't want me doing anything with you, and blah, blah, blah. So that furthers along me getting upset. Mm-hmm. Winding down to the end of the story here, I knew one of the wrestlers. Since I rode with him, I now have to find an alternate way to get back to the city, because we were like 2.5 hours away. So I spoke with one of the wrestlers, female talent, who I knew was going to be going back the same way I came from. So I said, hey, do you have enough room with you? Can I ride with you back? She said, no problem. At the end of the show, I packed up all my stuff. I left his stuff at the table, didn't even touch his stuff, packed up all my equipment, started to head out the door with all my equipment and was going to her vehicle. Now, at this point, I'm going to ask you if I can curse for this one because this kind of requires it.
I would prefer if you didn't.
Okay. I'm going to bleep it out. All right. So as I'm walking to her car, the photographer sees me with my bag walking to her car. Now, he's got this picture that an artist drew of him for him, and it's a framed photo and everything. And when he sees me walk into this car, he becomes upset for some reason. Like he didn't know that he had done something wrong to me. So he slams down this photo and goes, way to be a road dog, mother. Bleep.
Oh, wow.
So I just turned back, and I didn't want to further any issues. I didn't want to create any issues because I'm new to doing anything in this business. So I don't want to burn any bridges or tick anybody off. So all I did was turn back and say, you have a great day, have safe travels, and see you never,
Right.
I told him that, and I'm on this car ride back with her and these two other guys. These two guys are training at a local wrestling school near me, Elevate Pro Wrestling Training School, as they call it, the Elevate Performance Center. And we get to talking on the way back, and it just came up that they were asking me if I'd be interested in training. And I knew personally there's no way in hell I'm going to train to be a wrestler because I'm beyond all that at this point in this age, which, I could still probably do it if I get into the right shape. But that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's off the cards for me. But I said, you know what? Yeah, I would absolutely love to get into training and get into the feel of what pro wrestling really is and get to know the people. So after that, I talked to the promoter running the school, and next thing you know, I was at the training facility, and I threw myself all in. I didn't really hold back any. I did everything that everyone else did. I pushed myself. I pushed my limits, and now 4 years later, here I am.
Wow, that's a pretty amazing story as to how you got into all of that. And it's so funny because I was actually gonna ask you, had you ever thought about, an in-ring career at some point, but you basically answered that question. But you never know. One day you could, wind up like DDP because he started relatively late, in terms of age, but he still wound up doing a good job. So you just never know.
Yeah.
But that's a really amazing story. It was a lot going on in it, but it was really interesting. So I wanted to ask you, how do the fans in the independent wrestling circle sort of treat you, and if you have like a following?
Well, I would say that they have been very, very good to me. I have, as a referee, we always get the same interaction no matter what we do for the most part. People want to see us get hit and hurt for some odd reason. We do absolutely nothing wrong sometimes, and we try to go down the line by the rules and call it down the middle. But we always get that chant of hit the ref for some unknown reason.
Oh my gosh.
But we do have those moments when, like, after during intermission or after a show, when fans will reach out, and I do too. And I've only had like a few fans ask to take photos of me, and that's the way it should be. There shouldn't be a lot of fans there, or there shouldn't really be any fans there to see a referee. But the fans do notice our work. There was a show I was working not too long ago when I was doing commentary, and the referees in the ring weren't, I don't know how to put this in a polite way. They weren't doing a very good job. It was kind of sloppy. And I just I sat there doing commentary, and I was just like, I can't take this. So, I hopped back up. I put on my I told the workers, because we were at the main event of the night. I told the workers working the main event, I said, listen, guys, are you guys cool with me reffing? They were like, hell yeah. So I always keep my gear with me, because that's a cardinal rule in the industry. Bring your gear everywhere, all of your gear. If you're a ring announcer, bring your suit. If you're a commentator, bring your suit. If you're a referee as well, bring your ref gear. Bring whatever. So I hopped into my ref gear, and as soon as I walked out the curtain, there were actually wrestlers in the audience. There were that popped as soon as they saw me. Because when you watch something of a lesser value or lesser quality, when you see something that you know is going to be good, it gets you excited. And that's kind of what happened there. These fans had already known what I do, and they pay attention to what I do. And the workers who were in the audience that night, they were happy to see someone who they knew was going to help the product. Especially for the main event of the night. And for me, that was a lot of fun to hear and feel the audience reaction to just me, a referee. A lot of the times we think they don't notice or they don't care, but when you have moments like that, it really helps you to understand that even though you're a small part, well, not really a small part, but in the eyes of the fans, a small part of the match, the fans still recognize it, and they recognize what you do.
Okay, that's pretty good. So I want to ask, how do you feel about the direction of wrestling in 2020? I know a lot has changed with the current situation that basically the world is dealing with, but I want to know, like, how do you feel, about wrestling going forward in comparison to how it was in the past? And is there anything that you've noticed, if you watch wrestling, whether on television or even in the independent circuit, like, how has it changed, for you and how you see it?
I would say that it's changed the way a lot of people look at it, not just myself, but a lot of people, because when you have a situation like, and it's starting to come back where you can have fans now, but when you have a situation like where you have to work shows where there are absolutely no fans, there's no one there to applaud, there's no one there to really feed off of and get that adrenaline and that emotion from, it really puts into perspective exactly how important of a factor the fans really play. It's not just that fans are there to watch or to see a show, but they're also a huge part of that show. When you were watching WWE, when it all this first started, and you didn't hear any fan reaction, you didn't hear anything, you didn't see anything, it especially like, let's say, WrestleMania. It took away a whole lot from the show. It took away a huge part of the show, because even when you're watching at home and you hear that audience reaction and you feel the atmosphere, even through your television, it's a big part of it. And it helps hype the at-home audience up. It helps hype the wrestlers, the everyone in production up. It's a huge adrenaline rush to have those people in that audience. And I think moving forward into 2021, that there's more of an appreciation for that in the wrestling industry today, amongst the workers, amongst the production crew, amongst everyone, to really just know exactly what it truly means to have an audience and to have a fan base.
Yes, I completely understand where you're coming from, because there's a level of energy that is missing with the audience sort of not being there, of course, out of safety precautions. But it was a bit of an adjustment, for me, watching it without an audience, because for as long as I can remember, since I was a child, you always had an audience there, and for the very first time there wasn't one, and it's just kind of like, whoa. It's almost like you feel it was almost like just air in a room, and there was no other people except the people working.
Yeah.
But I do commend shows, and including WWE, for still going forward to try to continue to give us some form of entertainment in the midst of everything that was happening. It's like everybody else was canceled for a period of time, but they weren't. And they were still trying to give us something, to love and something to still enjoy in the midst of all of this. And then with independent shows, I can only imagine, well, I've talked to other independent wrestlers since I've started this podcast, and they talk about how different, and how hard it had been of an adjustment to not wrestle as much. And then gradually, once they were allowed to wrestle again and they had a few fans there, it's like they felt like there was a sense of normalcy that had come back, but not so much so to the point to where it's like normal like it used to be. And as a fan, I do miss going to live shows, because here in Birmingham, Alabama, WWE would come at least once a year, sometimes twice. And for the first time, like, no wrestling show has been here, and it has been heck, because I miss it so much, and I miss the camaraderie of it. But I hope that one day everything will be back to normal again. So has it affected you? How has it affected how you've worked this year?
Really, once the coronavirus thing started, I was only working a few promotions throughout this state and other states. My main promotion was Elevate Pro Wrestling. The last show I worked was Pro Wrestling Movement, which is the company I'm with now. And I was the main ring announcer for Revolt Pro Wrestling out in Florida and Alabama. And I did a few things with some shows in Mississippi, but everything came to a screeching halt when coronavirus hit. Just every promotion they were trying to do the most they could, like still training and still trying to run, do a few filmings and things like that. But eventually the commission in Louisiana put a stop to all even filming on closed sets. They stopped even that. So the commission really, and here's where it gets interesting, because the commission really has a whole lot of control over professional wrestling on the independent circuit, where they're in states where there are commissions. Revolt Pro Wrestling, as a result of everything, I think sold the promoter sold the company. So that put me, a little bit of a setback, but it is what it is. I'll just, we'll move forward and see what happens from here on out. Elevate Pro Wrestling, they kind of, they did a few tapings on closed sets before the commission shut everything down again. Pro Wrestling 225 did a couple of tapings, but now they're running most of their shows in Mississippi or Texas, in states where they'll let them run a show, I've got a show coming up January 30th, which will be the first show I will have worked since the coronavirus, since the beginning of this. And that will be with Battle Zone Championship Wrestling. And I can't wait, because it's going to be my first show back in a very long time. I've still kept up with some of my training and getting in the ring and trying to keep some form of a ring shape, because all this downtime hasn't really helped out with myself in a good condition or a good weight schedule. So now I've got to really push myself to get back to where I was before all of this kind of started. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, so switching gears a little bit, I want to ask if, As a commentator and a ring announcer, do you have to memorize facts about wrestlers on a constant basis?
For ring announcing, it's fairly simple because all I really have to do is get with the guys, figure out exactly, guys and girls, figure out exactly what they want from me as far as an announcer, and just give it my all for them. Some people, when it comes to, and every commentator has their own way about them. Every ring announcer has their own way about them. For me, when I'm doing ring announcing, I try to do my best to keep my level at the same, whether they're a heel or they're a baby face. Some people prefer to give the baby face more of an oomph when they're doing their announcing. And that's completely fine, but I prefer to keep it at the same level, whether they're heel, whether they're face. And then on commentary, yes, it's a lot of communication with the athletes and with the promoters and just everybody. It's you have to take a ton of notes, mark a ton of things down. You have to have a clear path of what the promotion is trying to get done, what you're trying to convey to the audience, what type of story we're telling here. It's a whole lot more that goes into it than just sitting there and looking at what's happening in the ring and calling it based on that. You're also telling a story, not just that the audience or that the promotion wants you to tell, but also that the athlete wants you to tell as well, because they may have some accolades or things that they've accomplished in their career that they would really like the audience to know about. And you have to try to cram all of that sometimes into a little 5-minute or 10-minute match. So, and then you've got somebody else there with you that they've got to do their part of it. So you really have to find a way to make everything that everyone wants come together in a very short period of time.
Wow. See, I'm glad I asked that question because, from the outside looking in, you think it wouldn't. You almost think that commentators kind of just know this off the top of their head because they're just good. But then to know that it actually takes a whole lot of work, that's really fascinating to hear. And it makes me feel like I feel like a nerd now, knowing that it actually takes that much work to actually do. Like, that is amazing. I'm a knowledge, I'd love to eat knowledge. So that would be like the best thing for me.
And sometimes we do it on the fly. Sometimes there have been times when I've been sitting at a commentary table and I literally have my phone underneath the table and I Google something. Like at Elevate Pro Wrestling, we had a champion who had been the longest reigning champion with us. He had held the title for I don't know how many. I think it was a little over a year. So what I did is I Googled a list while I'm sitting there at the commentary table. I Googled a list of longest reigning champions throughout all of pro wrestling and all of history. And I think I came up with that he was ranked number 6 for longest reigning champions or longest title reigns in professional wrestling history. So sometimes we even find out these things while we're sitting at a table because it just pops into our heads. Hey, wouldn't this be some interesting knowledge?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I want to ask, do you have any aspirations to pursue a career with a mainstream company like WWE, AEW, or Impact, or the like?
I would absolutely love to work with a number of the companies. I think for me personally, if it were up to me, which I know it's not going to be up to me at the end of the day, but if I had the opportunity to sign any number of those contracts and get any offer, I would say I would probably want to go with AEW, personally, because of the way the company is and the way that it's run. And plus, the stories I've listened to, I've read a lot of books and I've listened to a lot of audiobooks from wrestlers, commentators, ring announcers, and there are some books out there, and if you really get into the details of what some companies are really like behind the scenes, you kind of get a great understanding of who you would rather work for just through the stories and the way that you learn about the behind the scenes workings of certain companies. So for me, listening to like Justin Roberts' audiobook and Jim Ross's most recent audiobook, hearing the stories that they tell kind of tell me that the right direction for me and the right path for me, if I was given the opportunity, would be AEW, possibly Impact Wrestling. I mean, I'll work any promotion, really. I absolutely love what I do, and I'll go anywhere in the country, any promotion to work. And it's about how I'm going to feel at that promotion, because I don't want to feel like I'm not wanted. I don't want to feel like I'm being stepped on. I want to feel like my input means something. I want to feel like what I'm doing means something, and that the company actually cares about its people. And that's going to be the first and foremost thing on my list of what I would like out of a company.
Okay, I respect that. What lessons would you say you've learned during your time in wrestling, whether they be life lessons or just lessons about wrestling?
Many in all aspects. I think the single most important lesson I learned as a referee was always bring a second pair of pants. When you have those moments I had a show where I was reffing a match and my pants ripped in the back, and then no one noticed. Gratefully, no one noticed except me. And when I got to the back, I'm scurrying around looking for something I could use, and one of the athletes happened to have a pair of black workout pants he had, and I asked him. I said, "Are you gonna wear those to the ring?" And he was like, "No." I was like, "Cool, can I use them?" He was like, "What happened?" And I showed him my pants, and he was like, "Oh, okay." So the rest of the show, I'm working with black workout pants, and nobody really noticed either. So that's one of the best lessons, and also just out of life lessons, just how you treat people and how you interact with people, because there are so many things and so many big things going on in the pro wrestling industry, with lights being shined on sexual harassment, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it really speaks volumes on how we should treat people in everyday life, not just in business itself. This is a very much primarily male-dominated sport for now. And I say for now because women are becoming more and more of a forefront for professional wrestling. And I think that's a great thing, because women's wrestling had been held down and just kept to nothing more than eye candy and based on attractiveness as opposed to actual ability in ring.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's great that it's changing now, and the way we look at women's wrestling is changing now. But you still hear that. If I'm in the audience, I'll still hear men say things, or you know, and you just know that it's the same banter that's been going on for ages, but we can only hope to change not just the look at it, but just the overall way we treat women in this industry. I think that's a big step that we need to take to move forward, to no longer looking at it as a man's sport, but looking at it as a sport overall for anyone, and treating everyone the way we would want to be treated ourselves.
Right. I stand for all of that. You are absolutely correct, because I feel like this year has definitely, I feel like all around, but definitely in wrestling, has been a year has been a year of revealing people and their character. And it's just, and in revealing and in knowing, how people actually are, it's just a matter of, it makes you want to push for treating people a whole lot better, a whole lot more than you may have. It may be something that you may have tried to do in the past, but it definitely makes you want to try harder to do it now with the way that some people have been treated, even in wrestling. And I definitely appreciate your viewpoint on that. So we're going to switch gears again, and I'm going to ask you, who are some of your favorite wrestlers now, whether they be male or female?
I would say probably one of my absolute favorites in more recent history has been AJ Styles, Randy Orton. I have to say that those are two of the absolute best, and they really elevate everyone that they work with. They're not just there for themselves. They're there for the guy across the ring from them. In matches like Shinsuke Nakamura versus AJ Styles back in New Japan, you really got a view of what pro wrestling can be in the future. And looking at people, especially in TNA, and well, not TNA anymore, Impact, and also AEW. AEW is taking a huge stance for everyone, and I congratulate them on that. It's not just about the guys who are the big names. It's about anyone who steps into that ring and comes through those doors, which is great. But as far as my favorite goes there, I would probably have to say Cody is going to be on the top of my list, and it's not just because of performance, it's because of his character. You really see a lot of his character, and I hear a lot of ridicule for him with the TNT Championship when he was doing the open challenges. People were like, well, why is he just bringing in these guys to job them out? And from the fans, you hear that, but you have to realize that he was bringing these guys in not to job them out, not to book them to beat them. He was bringing them in to showcase what they could offer. Because if he wanted to bring them in and bury them, he could have done what we've seen companies like WWE do to local talent for decades, where they bring them in, they're in the ring for no more than 30 seconds to a minute, and it's a squash match. Cody didn't do that. Cody brought these guys in, put them on a title opportunity nonetheless, and worked matches with them, 5 minutes, 10-minute matches with these guys to really showcase what they had to an audience that they would not have been able to showcase to outside of that. So he's one of my absolute favorites. I'll have to say, as far as female athletes go, Sasha Banks is up there. She's one that you really can see how passionate she is about the business every time she steps into that ring. Charlotte Flair is, and this has been said by many of my friends, I kind of feel somewhat similar, but not to that extent. But they say that she is the best wrestler in this business today, hands down. Whether it be male, whether it be female, a lot of people are saying that she is the best in the business today. And I have to say she has got a lot of accomplishments. She is a phenomenal athlete. Becky Lynch, absolutely phenomenal. These three, I would have to say probably are the benchmark for women's wrestling right now. And character development in-ring capabilities, they are very well-rounded individuals.
Right. I actually like a lot of your favorites, and definitely I agree with you in terms of the women, especially how you mentioned Sasha Banks first, because she is actually my favorite, and I will go down saying that she's the greatest female in-ring competitor ever. And I know it could be fought about because you did mention Charlotte, and she's great too. And Becky Lynch is amazing as well. But I just feel like Sasha is the greatest. But I am proud of the work that all three of them, and including Bayley, have done in terms of women's wrestling. And I'm just really proud of any women's wrestler, period. Like, I'm just an advocate for women's wrestling as a whole, because I remember growing up and watching the women just sort of have these eye candy type matches.
Yeah.
And to see it grow, and to see it grow so gradually and so naturally into what it is now, it's just been nothing short of a blessing. So it's just been fantastic. So I'm gonna ask you, what do you believe the future holds for you, Devin?
Well, honestly, I can say that I hope that I will have a long career in this business, and that I will be doing this for a long time coming. And I do hope that one day I'll get a call up to one of the major companies. If it never happens, it never happens, but hopefully it does. And I just want to see myself on a stage working with people that I absolutely love to be around and love to work with. That's the only real thing that I want out of this business, is to work with people who are great people in and out of the business.
Okay. Well, Devin, thank you so much for coming on my show. I really appreciate it, and I've enjoyed talking to you. If there's any social media handles that you want to, use to sort of put yourself over, you can do that now. And if there's anything you've got coming up that you want to tell the people or listeners about, then go ahead and do that now as well.
All right. So, well, first and foremost, thank you very much for having me on and working with me here. And I'm definitely interested in, if ever you want to have me back on, I would love to do that. And the only thing I could really say right now is January 30th, 2021, Battle Zone Championship Wrestling will be in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. We are looking forward to having an amazing show. They got some amazingly talented people, faces that you'll even see on AEW Dark right now. They will be there at Battle Zone Championship Wrestling January 30th in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. So check it out. Hopefully you'll be able to be there. You're not too far. You're in Alabama. So
right.
Make the trek. Come on down. Come see us at Battle Zone. This is going to be my first time working with this promotion. I'm extraordinarily excited to debut.
Okay. So thank you so much for coming on my show, and it was a pleasure talking to you. Devin Christianson. Okay, so I was sitting with my friends one day and they asked me, Stephanie, how do you record your podcast? And I said, with the Anchor app on my phone. And they were like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, it's that simple. It is absolutely free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone and your computer. And it will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can also make money from the podcast with no minimum listenership. And it's got everything you need to make a podcast in one place. They even have classes and stuff that you can listen to that will give you all kinds of good tips on what you need to do in order to make the best podcast. So if you want to do this, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's anchor.fm, or download the free Anchor app to get started. All right, so now we're going to start our weekly recaps, and we're going to start with Raw. This was the Go Home Raw before Survivor Series, and a lot happened, and we're just going to discuss it and go all the way through. And we're going to start with our women. So with the women, you had a 6-woman tag match between Asuka, Mandy Rose, and Dana Brooke versus Shayna Baszler, Nia Jax, the women's tag team champions, and Lana. And this was really interesting because I was wondering when the show came on, like, why is it that Lana is teaming up with these people who have done nothing but torment her and crash her through announce tables and all of the above, but yet this is happening. So yeah, and it also freaked me out, I think it freaks me out during this Survivor Series, build up, where we're showing the Raw teams, fighting amongst each other. I think that kind of frustrates me to a certain degree because I'm just sort of like, yo, like, you guys should be coming together instead of fighting each other. But whatever. So Lana, tried to do her best in this match to get in on the action, but Shayna and Nia just kept undermining her and kept talking down to her the whole match, and it was so sad. So basically Nia and Shayna basically injured Mandy Rose in this match. They injured her elbow by running her into the steel steps. And then they dominated Asuka and Dana Brooke most of the time. But then finally Lana found a way to get in on the action, tagged herself in and tried to pin Asuka, but she kicked out. And then she got trapped in the Asuka lock to force a submission. So Lana wound up tapping out, and Asuka, Dana Brooke, and Mandy Rose wound up winning the match, even though Mandy couldn't celebrate with them because she was still very much injured. And then Nia, after the match, faked like she had respect for Lana for, going through with it and actually still trying to put up a fight against Asuka. But then she grabbed her and then slammed her with a Samoan drop through the announce table for the 9th time in a row. And it was so sad. And then afterward, we had a segment involving Reckoning from Retribution, aka Mia Yim, attacking Dana Brooke as she was trying to explain what happened to Mandy Rose and what the extent of her injuries were. But then after that attack happened, and after, Lana, well, not Lana, but after Dana Brooke got beat up and stuff, Adam Pearce announced that, well, not Adam Pearce, but Charlie Caruso announced that Peyton Royce and Lacey Evans will be replacing Dana Brooke and Rose for the Survivor Series match for Team Raw. And this kind of felt a little bit disappointing because a lot of people on Twitter were thinking, oh, well, this was sort of a setup for for Charlotte or for Naomi to sort of come back and be like the strong base for Team Raw. But this wound up not happening. They were going with the women that they, originally had, which I'm not necessarily mad about, because in between Peyton Royce and Lacey Evans, really, who else do they have at this point to take their place? So they're doing that now, and honestly, I'm not really, convinced that Team Raw is going to come away with the win against Team SmackDown, because on Team SmackDown, you now have Natalya, Bayley, the Riot Squad, and Bianca Belair, and they actually have a little bit more of a united front, but I'll discuss more of that on the SmackDown recap. But I'm just not convinced that Team Raw is going to, come away with the victory this time. So that's really all what happened with that. And then also with the women, you had an encounter between Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss. And these two have just been, back and forth with each other ever since, even after Alexa Bliss said that she was going to choose The Fiend over, her friendship with Nikki Cross. But Nikki still feels like Alexa Bliss can be saved. So during the segment in which The Miz came out to talk at Bray Wyatt, Bliss came out to make sure that the match was gonna still, go as planned. But then Nikki tried to interrupt her and tell her, yo, I know you're still in there, it's okay. And then Alexa Bliss was like, yeah, it seemed like she had came back a little bit, but then she proceeded to attack Nikki Cross, and then they both started fighting one another as Bray Wyatt came out for his match. And then we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But it's just so sad to see this relationship sort of just fall apart now, simply because Alexa Bliss has now been possessed by The Fiend, and now she's, The Fiend's Harley Quinn now. So that was pretty sad to see. And that's pretty much all that really happened with the women. Like I said, I'm not really convinced that Team Raw is going to come away with the win in terms of the women, but, we'll see. But then we also have Asuka versus Sasha Banks in their champion versus champion match, and Asuka basically said that Sasha Banks, will never be ready for her. So there we go with that. So the show started with Drew McIntyre opening the show to address, Roman Reigns and how he basically got in his face last week on SmackDown and said that he was going to face him after he beat Randy Orton for the WWE title tonight. And he called out Roman for putting him on a pedestal, over everybody else. But then Randy Orton interrupted on the Titantron, and he explained that he was, too good to lose or be phased by any suspension that he may have faced or whatever. Because, of course, a long time ago, Randy Orton was a wild boy and he didn't have that much discipline. So now, he's talking about how he rose above everything he was ever, faced with in terms of, WWE trouble or legal trouble or whatever. Then The Miz and John Morrison came out and interrupted, them as Drew McIntyre left. And then they explained how they were going to make an impact regardless of who won in the main event, because The Miz could very well cash in his Money in the Bank contract and win the match and go on to face Roman Reigns at Survivor Series. This Money in the Bank briefcase is always a wild card because you just never know what could happen there. And then they said that Bray Wyatt was afraid of them, as long as they held control over the WWE Championship, that no one else did. Now, y'all know that Bray Wyatt / The Fiend isn't scared of anybody, especially two, bumbling dudes like The Miz and John Morrison. They're calculating, but they're still goofy and bumbling in terms of going up against someone as menacing as The Fiend. So we're going to get more into that a little bit later as well. Then we had the Raw Tag Team Championship match between the New Day, Kofi and Xavier, versus the Hurt Business in Cedric Alexander and Shelton Benjamin. MVP basically came out and explained that the Hurt Business needed to represent Raw because their group was the best of the best. And they said that, and they were basically underestimating the New Day and saying that they were not the best of the best to face the Street Profits come Survivor Series. Shelton Benjamin promised that he and Cedric would defeat the Street Profits in Survivor Series, while Bobby Lashley was going to take out Sami Zayn in their champion versus champion match. But then Kofi and Xavier were not impressed. Then, as the match started, the Hurt Business started trying to slow down and dominate Kofi Kingston, hitting an impressive top rope famouser / powerbomb combination. It was really cool. And then Kofi fought out with a tilt-a-whirl DDT to get the tag to Xavier Woods. And then Woods went off with a whole lot of momentum, clearing the ring of both of them, of Cedric and Shelton. And I really feel like he is just so underrated, and he deserves more praise than he gets for his wrestling ability. It's like he's the talker of the group, but he definitely deserves better in terms of his wrestling abilities. I would love to possibly see him in a singles run, maybe. Since they're giving singles runs to Big E and Kofi, give Xavier one. Give him a good one. That would be cool. Then, there was an impressive dropkick from Cedric Alexander, and they almost won the match with that. But then Kofi survived an angle slam and from Shelton Benjamin, which I thought was a huge, cool flashback moment, and a brain buster, and then set up Daybreak for the pinfall on Cedric Alexander. So the New Day were able to retain their Raw Tag Team titles, and now they're going to go on to face the Street Profits in their champion versus champion match at Survivor Series, which I'm excited about. But all in all, I really feel like this tag team match was a great showing of black excellence here. And of course, the tag team match, at Survivor Series will be a great show of black excellence as well. We're going to talk more about that in the SmackDown recap. So that was a really cool match to look at. Then we had Team Raw versus Retribution. So of course you have the people on Team Raw. You have AJ Styles, Matt Riddle, Keith Lee, Braun Strowman, and Sheamus going up against Retribution. This ragtag group of rebels who are just trying to turn everything upside down. Before this, Jeff Hardy got in Elias's face, and he attacked him and told him to drop the accusations, and he grabbed his beard, while getting in his face, and I thought that was really menacing. I know if I had a beard and if somebody was grabbing me by it, I'd feel very threatened. So, but thankfully I don't ever have to worry about that. So there we go. AJ Styles gave them matching Raw t-shirts to make themselves look like a united front, which I thought was cute, but they really weren't interested in that. So, also during this segment, there was something that was really funny. It was a funny interaction between AJ Styles and his bodyguard, Jordan. He basically asked Jordan, how was it that he was able to talk to Sheamus, or I believe it was Keith Lee. And then he was like, why are you talking to him? And then he was like, do you even speak English? And then Jordan was like, of course I speak English. And he was like, what? I didn't know this. And then Jordan was like, you never asked. And then he was like, I have so many questions. And he sounded so concerned about the fact that he did not know that Jordan could speak English. So now I guess we'll see them talking more now that he knows English. But yeah, I thought that was really funny. Then AJ Styles was on commentary during this match, but then he had to go meet Braun Strowman and Sheamus as the two argued with each other. He tried to calm down the tempers because he's basically declared himself the captain of Team Raw. But then they were able to calm down as Retribution isolated Matt Riddle for a bit, and then he faced the aggressive energy of T-Bar, Mace, and Slapjack. And of course, they were guided by Mustafa Ali. So this was a really interesting concept, because you had Retribution, who seems like they're more united than Team Raw is currently at this point, but they're not facing Team SmackDown, so we're gonna leave them alone. Then Keith Lee got the hot tag and then ran over Retribution with a whole lot of focus and a whole lot of aggression there. But then Sheamus and Strowman got back into the fight, of the match, but then they couldn't stop fighting amongst each other enough to focus. And then Mustafa managed to roll up Matt Riddle after knocking him into Braun Strowman to steal the win. So Retribution won this match, and I'm glad they did, because here lately it seems like they would talk so much crap about beating everybody up, outside of the ring, but from an in-ring perspective, they weren't winning anything. So it was nice to finally see them win a match in ring, even though it was a little bit nefarious because they were taking advantage of the fact that Team Raw just isn't, on the same page. So, I feel like Team Raw is just going to have to pull it together before Sunday so they can, try and come out with a win against Team SmackDown. So, yeah, I feel like this is the one match that could be a wild card here. It's like either one could win, because you have so many strong players in this match on Team SmackDown and on Team Raw for the men. But we'll see how it's going to come together. And then after that, we had Bray Wyatt versus The Miz. And then Bray Wyatt called out The Miz on the Firefly Funhouse show. And then there was this really funny part of the Firefly Funhouse where Bray Wyatt was training, and then he did a whole spelling bee thing. And then I think Alexa Bliss asked him to spell the word, forgive me for cursing, but jackass. And then he spelled it M-I-Z. And they said that was correct. And I thought that was so funny, because I was just like, oh, that's so rude. So The Miz, like I said, tried to talk Bray Wyatt out of the match. But then Alexa Bliss, made it clear that the match was still going to happen. But then she had a fight with Nikki Cross. And then as the match got started, The Miz took control really early, but then he couldn't keep Bray Wyatt down, of course. And then he rallied, especially after Alexa Bliss launched herself at John Morrison. Like, she jumped out of nowhere onto John Morrison and flipped him over the barricade and into, the digital audience. And I was like, whoa. She looked like a whole spider monkey. I thought that was really funny. And then Bray Wyatt caught The Miz in the corner and then hit the Sister Abby for the win. And then as he was celebrating the win with Bliss, they walked up, the ramp holding hands. And then the Fiend, was staring down at them, so I guess the spirit of the Fiend was staring down at them as they, won this match or whatever. So, creepy. Then, something that was really beautiful to see, because I'm a girl, Angel Garza had a backstage promo dressed in a suit with a rose, talking about how a beautiful woman, is like a rose, and a thorn is like a man to protect her, and I can protect you, and all this other stuff. And I'm just like, Angel, you are so gorgeous. But then it was also met with a twinge of bittersweetness, because every time I look at Angel Garza now, I just get reminded of the fact that Zelina isn't there anymore. And I also get reminded of the fact that Andrade is out, and we don't know what show he's going to be on, and is if he comes back. Like, they didn't even draft him at all. They didn't draft him to any show, and now Zelina's gone. And what's so funny is I believe I was incorrect in this assessment, in the fact that I didn't think that it would be in a situation where Zelina would be gone and Andrade would be undrafted and disappeared, and Angel would be left behind and be the only one left standing. But I've been saying all year that I really feel like Angel Garza can come out a star, but I didn't think it was going to be like this under these type of dire straits at all. It's really sad. So yeah. Then we got to the main event involving Randy Orton and Drew McIntyre for the WWE Championship. And before this match got underway, Sheamus, who is friends with Drew McIntyre, met him, backstage with this giant leather case. And he gave it to him saying, this should help you, get your mind right in order to win this match. And he opened it, and it actually had, an ancestral connection, and he was able, and it had a sword in there, number one, and then number two, it had a kilt, and it sort of was a callback to what he used to wear when he was in WWE the first time, to represent his Scottish roots. So he put on the kilt, came out there with the sword, and he looked so hot. He looked so hot. I saw an older picture this week of him wearing the kilt, and he looked like a baby then, because he had his, face shaven and all that. He had a clean face with his long hair, and he looked okay. But now that he's all buff and looks like a whole grown man with all the hair on his chest and the hair on his face and the hair on his head with that kilt and the sword, I was like, that this is a Scottish hottie right here. Yes. Oh, I enjoyed it, and I'm gonna enjoy Sunday, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Randy wasn't interested in talking before, his match with Drew, so he just kind of just stormed out there ready to fight. But Drew made his entrance with the sword and the kilt, and it was really cool. He came out there with fire and everything. It was really amazing. I felt like he was just so believable in that role, as the Scottish warrior. So, hey, Drew McIntyre is here to stay, y'all. During the match, there was a point where Randy Orton tried to run away from the match and win via countout so he could still retain his title. But Adam Pearce, possibly the greatest authority figure ever in WWE history, announced that this match would have a definite winner, and that there weren't going to be any countouts or disqualifications. So once that got, underway, Orton shifted his focus and took advantage, and he grabbed every weapon he could to take down Drew McIntyre. He used a steel chair and steel steps, and he tried to wear him down, over and over again, and he blasted him repeatedly on the announce table. But then, while, Drew had taken this really bad beating, he refused to stay down, and they battled back to the ring where McIntyre nearly caught Orton with a backslide, followed by the Future Shock DDT. And then McIntyre knocked him off the apron through a table, and he finally got the momentum back as he tried to close in on winning this match. But then Randy Orton countered, the Claymore kick into a power slam, and then he planted him with a draping DDT off the announce table, followed by a second DDT in the ring. But then finally, Drew McIntyre hit him with a final attempt at the Claymore, and he was able to win his championship back. So now Drew McIntyre is now the new WWE champion, and he's going to go on to face Roman Reigns at Survivor Series. And this is what I wanted. This is 100% what I wanted all day long. Let's go. I'm so excited. So, yeah, we're going to have a battle of the beefcakes, the long-haired beefcakes. The Scottish Warrior versus the Tribal Chief. Y'all, I am so ready for this match at Survivor Series. This is going to be lit. And that's the end of the Raw recap. So now we're going to go into a slightly amended NXT and AEW recap. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the components of NXT and AEW that I did see So Wednesday, I didn't get a chance to watch NXT or AEW in their entirety because I was participating in a Survivor Series block party chat room event with Tyron Asbury, Miranda Morales, Derek Gamble, and Rob Williams. And they all have amazing wrestling podcasts that I will talk about a little bit later. And we are a part of a family and a message thread on Facebook, and we all support each other, as we, find our way through this wrestling podcasting landscape. And they've definitely been helping me over the past couple of months, and it's been greatly appreciated. So during this chat, well, let me first of all talk about the parts of NXT that I saw. I saw that Leon Ruff was still the NXT North American champion, and that Johnny Gargano is probably going to run after him, and Damian Priest is going to run after him. And so it seems like Leon Ruff is a hot commodity now, and it's so good to see because he literally just jumped from being a jobber, to being an actual, trainee in the Performance Center to now being a champion. And I'm so proud of him, yay, Leon. And I also saw the part of NXT where Io Shirai and Rhea Ripley, faced each other for the NXT Women's Championship. And that match was absolutely fire. Like sheer, pure, unadulterated fire. But then again, the women of NXT are always fire anyway, so I wasn't really surprised. Now, something that I was surprised about was definitely the result, because out of these two women, you never know who exactly is going to win. And I think that's the beauty of the women's division in NXT. It's always a wild card. You never know who's going to come out the victor in these types of matches. Rhea Ripley definitely had something to prove as someone who won the championship but then lost her way once she lost the championship to Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania. And then Io Shirai wanted to prove to herself that she wasn't just going to let Rhea Ripley run all over her, and she was going to retain her title to say, this is my title now and I'm here to stay right now as long as this champion with longevity. And they both showed the best of themselves in this match. Now, I was 100% surprised that Rhea Ripley lost. I was surprised that she lost because she just had a whole lot of, momentum going into this match. And now Io has retained. And then after the match ended, they showed each other respect and hugged one another and held each other's faces, which I thought was really beautiful. I always love it when the opponents, show their respect to one another and sort of break kayfabe in that way. And then Rhea Ripley, left. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, if she's gone, then what is she going to do now? She's done everything on NXT. She's faced Raquel Gonzalez. She's faced some of the best of the best. She beat Shayna Baszler. Like, what more can she do? She's also been on NXT UK. She was the NXT UK Women's Champion. What more can Rhea Ripley do? Is she going to get called up? I was thinking that she might have been put on the Survivor Series team for SmackDown because they had two openings there. But that wound up not happening. So what's up with Rhea Ripley? What's going to happen now? So I think, the future is always bright for her, because she has so much to offer. So I'm not worried, but I was always thinking, what's up? What's going to happen now? And then after that match, you had Finn Balor come out, and congratulate them on their job well done because they were the main event in terms of the matches. And he came out to address sort of like the state of the NXT championship since he's been out and injured because he got his jaw broken in his match against Kyle O'Reilly at TakeOver. But then he got interrupted by Pat McAfee, Oney Lorcan, Danny Burch, the NXT Tag Team Champions, and Pete Dunne. And of course, they were out there, gallivanting, talking about, how they run NXT, and how, if they don't give the title to, if Pat McAfee was saying, if you don't give the title to me, you're gonna wind up exactly like Killian Dane and like, the Undisputed Era and all that other stuff. But then Finn Balor basically said that he didn't come alone, and then the lights went out, and then the Undisputed Era came back all dressed in hoodies and black jeans or whatever to beat the crap out of them. And I was so glad because I believe during this NXT show, they were beefing up War Games, which is happening next month. And I was really excited for that, to hear that and to, read about that, going into it. So I was like, yes, I am so glad. And then Adam Cole, there was a point where Adam Cole kicked the crap out of Pat McAfee. And you could hear it from the mountaintops of Kilimanjaro. It was so cool. I was like, whoa. like, it's been really interesting to sort of see this new ragtag group, put together by Pat McAfee, who I guess is now Adam Cole's new, one true person in terms of being a rival. And to watch them sort of come back, and beat them up finally. Like, I was so glad. It just, oh my God, it was so satisfying. And I cannot wait to see them go at it at War Games. Or as William Regal likes to say, War Games. I'm so pumped. And I also know that Team Shotzi is going to kick the crap out of whoever Candice LeRae is going to choose for Team Candice. So I'm really excited about War Games. War Games is one of my favorite takeovers ever, and I cannot wait for it to happen. Also, with the AEW women, because I feel like it was meant for me to see all the women stuff. Thunder Rosa, who I had on my show a couple episodes ago, shout out to her and everything that she's doing, had a rematch against Serena Deeb for the NWA women's title. And that match was really good too. Like, I enjoyed every inch of it, Here lately, I'm trying to, dabble in and out of AEW, from time to time, because I want to sort of expand my wrestling taste and my wrestling exposure. So I really enjoyed that match. I was watching to support her, definitely. I was really impressed with Serena Deeb because, I hadn't really seen her fight, or I myself hadn't really seen her fight since she was in the Mae Young Classic that time. And she impressed me even then, but it had been a while since I had seen her fight. And I just love, thinking about the fact that a long time ago, she was a part of the Straight Edge Society with CM Punk, and Luke Gallows. So it's amazing to see that evolution, just go from that to being a wrestler and now being a champion. But I was hard in my rooting for Thunder Rosa because I wanted her to, retain. And this match was really impressive, athletically. Like, there is absolutely nothing I feel like that Thunder Rosa can't do at this stage. So I'm going to sing the praises of both of them. And then Serena Deeb wound up retaining her title. But then after she had retained her title, before she had retained the title and won the match, there was interference from Dr. Britt Baker. And she tried to get in the face of Thunder Rosa and tried to sabotage the match, for her. And then after that happened, and after the match ended, Thunder Rosa, got in Britt Baker's face and threw her out of the audience and proceeded to beat the crap out of her. And everybody, had to break them up and everything. But I'm just like, I'm really intrigued because I want to know what is it that Britt Baker wants with Thunder Rosa and how this is going to happen and how this is going to play out. And I also feel, in terms of the women's division, you have Brandy in a feud with Jade Cargill, and Jade Cargill tried to break her arm with a chair. If not, did break her arm with a chair. So that was really interesting, so I'm really interested in seeing what that back and forth is going to be like too. So I feel like now, it's a start with their women's division in AEW, because one of the biggest complaints this year about AEW was the fact that their women's division did not have a whole lot, to offer. Their AEW women's champion is still, notably missing from television a lot of the time, but at least they have these, other stories to sort of keep you interested with their women's division as well, which is something that I do find that WWE tends to struggle with just a little bit, because it's like outside of their main title scene, it's like the women aren't necessarily in anything of purpose. And I think that's something that AEW is trying to tap into now with their women's division now that doesn't necessarily involve a title. So I think that's really interesting, to contrast those two things. But those are the things that I did see on NXT and AEW. But I also wanted to use this segment to talk about my Survivor Series block party experience with my friends that I mentioned earlier. So Tyron Asbury has his podcast called Talk Between the Ropes, and we connected a couple of months ago, and he wanted us to get together for a block party to talk about our dream Survivor Series matches. And we all talked about, our dream scenarios of what we would write creatively for our dream Survivor Series teams. And my team, I think, my teams were probably the longest to describe, because I just put together so many people who I thought could work really well together amongst the men and the women, and I separated my brand and stuff. And it was really cool to listen to everybody's teams, because I know Rob's team was like a team that was sort of like, you had like a demon team. And it was just really cool because he had like Kane in there, he had The Undertaker in there, he had Bray Wyatt in there, like a lot of, dark, scary people in a team. And it was just really cool to listen to them and how they came up with their teams, collectively. And another thing that we talked about was, what we were grateful for, since Thanksgiving is next week. We talked about all the things that we're grateful for in terms of our podcast. And I felt, moved to sort of talk about, how I started this thing when I had lost my job earlier this year, and how creatively I just figured, well, since I have all this time, I may as well just try this. And how I'd been thinking about doing a podcast for like the past couple of months anyway, but just never really had time to do it until right then. And I think something that's just blown my mind is just how this thing has grown and how people have been so willing to help me, in this process. And these are people from all over the country, and in some circumstances all over the world, who are interested in whatever it is that I'm doing as a new podcaster, and willing to answer any questions that I might have in terms of booking interviews, in terms of format, and just in terms of what we think about wrestling as a whole. And also the fact that these wrestling podcasters have allowed me to want to grow more in my knowledge of wrestling, because I tend to stay in one lane as a WWE fan, because I've been consistently a WWE fan for so very long. And for a while, there wasn't, a whole lot of everything to watch, like it is now. There wasn't access to, let me say that, there wasn't a whole lot of access to Ring of Honor, or a lot of access to New Japan. And there definitely wasn't a mainstream promotion to sort of rival WWE, even though you had Impact or TNA, and then now you have Impact, and then you also now have AEW. There's so much more out there, and listening to these podcasters and, congregating with them, more and more over the past couple of months has inspired me to sort of expand my horizons a bit and see, what more is out there. And I also talked about how grateful I am of the idea that I'm talking, to wrestlers. Because even though a few years ago, at meet and greets and also after live events that would come through here in Birmingham, a few years ago, I was actually getting to talk to them and get autographs from them and whatever. And I also credit my boyfriend for that, because he was the one who told me to have patience and wait, for whoever's going to come out, because I was always trying to see one specific person. And if I wasn't going to see that one specific person, then the whole night was a waste. But he said, no, just wait. And that was when Rich Swann came out and actually signed my women's title. And I was actually telling him how great he was. And then over the course of the last few years, I've actually been able to meet wrestlers, talk to them, get autographs from them, meet Ric Flair and all that other amazing stuff, even meeting Charlotte at that meet and greet that time. And now I'm in a place where what I do and how I talk about wrestling is opening doors for me to talk to other wrestlers outside of, WWE and stuff. And it's just such a huge blessing, because I feel like my inner child is meeting with my adult self, and there's a purpose behind it. And it feels so good, because for a while there, and I'm not going to get deep off into it, I was kind of lost after I graduated from college. And now I feel like for the first time, I'm building something that can actually last and can, open doors for me in a thing that I have loved since I was a child. Like, I've always wanted to talk to wrestlers, because they look like cool people, or because they look like superstars or superheroes. But the beautiful part is, it's like you find out that the people who look like superheroes are really people just like you, once you do get to talk to them. And I feel like that's the greatest blessing in all of this, is that I'm just really grateful for the fact that my inner child gets to talk to these superheroes, but then my grown-up self gets to see that they're humans just like me. And I hope that this can continue to grow, and I can continue to talk to more professionals like Devin Christianson, and more people like Promise Braxton, and more fans like my boyfriend, and like Jared Hicks and Ramsey Williams, who were on my show in the first season. And I'm just grateful for it all. And I hope that even in the midst of this pandemic and this crazy time, I can continue to grow and help it to be the best that it can be. And I'm going to end this segment by saying something that my pastor, started off saying once this pandemic actually started, is that the pandemic doesn't change the promise. And if there is anything that you are wanting to go for, whether it be a business or whether it be an artistic pursuit, making music or selling clothes or, doing this or just starting anything that you wanted to start, please do it, regardless of the circumstances, because you never know what can come from it. You never know who's actually listening. You never know who's actually paying attention to you and actually feel inspired by you and your journey. Even though you feel like you're not doing anything in the beginning, you're actually doing something and you're actually sparking the next mind to do something and to try something that they never tried before. So don't ever give up on yourself just because outside circumstances look rough right now. Don't give up from within. The pandemic doesn't change the promise that any higher power that you believe in has on your life. Don't ever give up. You have value and you are worthy. And that's the end of this segment. And I also recommend that you please listen to their shows. Tyron has a show called Talk Between the Ropes. Derek Gamble has 2 shows. He has Rap and Wrestle and he has Wrestling IQ 101. Please listen to him. Miranda Morales has about 4 different shows, but the 2 that pop out in my head right now are the Chairshot.com or at Chairshot Media and the Miranda Show with Greg DeMarco. And Rob Williams has his show called the Bob Culture Podcast. Please listen to them. They're amazing people. Please buy their merch. They're amazing people. If you love wrestling podcasts or if you're looking to learn more about wrestling, and you don't just want to listen to me, please listen to them. And that's the end of this segment. And now we're going to recap SmackDown. All right, and for the last weekly recap, we're going to talk about SmackDown. This was the final SmackDown before Survivor Series, of course. And so we're going to discuss the women. Natalya was mad that she wasn't just put on the Survivor Series team and she had to fight for her place, on the team. And Adam Pearce wasn't having it. He was like, yo, just go wrestle your match because it's next. And she had to fight Tamina in order to qualify for the team. And Bianca Belair was actually on commentary for this match, and then along with Bayley, who came out and superimposed herself as the captain. And for every time that Bianca Belair was trying to talk, it was almost like Bayley was trying to overtalk her and make it seem like, she was deserving of being the champion. Well, not the champion, but the captain and all this other stuff. And y'all need to just do what I say and all this other stuff. And she was clearly irritating Bianca, but Bianca was just trying to, keep a united front for the sake of Team SmackDown and stuff like that. So after Natalya won her match against Tamina, they came out there. The rest of the team came out there as Bayley, was goading everyone to come out there, and celebrate with her, as the new team member or whatever. But Bianca was just going to sit there for a second because she was like, no, Bayley, you can't tell me what to do. I'm okay. But then she finally, went up there, and then they held hands, and then the Riot Squad came out there, and then they all held hands and celebrated, looking that they're going to have a united front. But I feel like their discord was only planted a little bit. Like their discord was only had seeds into it. And I think the best part about SmackDown is the fact that sometimes they like to plant seeds as opposed to just going all out with the betrayal and stuff like that, which it seems like Raw keeps doing. It's like they keep showing these teams can't work together, but we'll see if they can pull together for Survivor Series. It's like you almost believe that Team SmackDown is going to come out, the victor, because they actually have the better female team. And they kind of do. So I'm actually, I'm always going to be on Team SmackDown side, except for when it comes to the tag team match between the New Day and the Street Profits, because I feel like, anybody could win out of that. But I'm always going to be on Team SmackDown because that's my show. So, yeah, so that was pretty interesting there. And also with the women, you had Sasha Banks sort of come out, and her and Asuka, had a sort of verbal back and forth between each other as Michael Cole sort of, tried to mediate or whatever. But then actually they kept going back and forth at each other. And then it's like right when Sasha Banks had her back turned, Carmella attacked her. And something that somebody on Twitter pointed out was the fact that they thought it was funny that Sasha Banks came out there dressed up in the whole gangster blue bandana type of look, looking like a big Crip. And then Carmella came out there dressed in all red like a blood. And I was just like, oh my God. Like, it was just so funny, but you couldn't deny that Sasha's outfit gave you big Crip vibes. And the fact that it matches her hair and the title is just like, whoa, it's just so cool. Plus, I think it's, kind of cute, how Snoop Dogg, is her cousin, and he is a Crip, he doesn't mind telling people that he was, doing that type of lifestyle, that she would actually embrace that component of herself. Also, she's from California. So it was just really interesting to see that. But this is no disrespect to anybody that participates in that life. I love y'all. So yeah, it was just really cool to see her dressed in that sort of outfit and sort of embracing that part of herself. Not saying that Sasha Banks is a Crip. She isn't. She was only dressed like one. But anyway, Carmella attacked her, and then Asuka was just kind of staring at her, and just staring at it happen. And I think what's irritating about this for me is the fact that Carmella keeps attacking her and not telling her why. And I just want to know what Carmella's motivations are other than proving she's untouchable. Okay, you can be untouchable and attack somebody from behind, but can you be untouchable when you attack them in the ring, though? Like, face-to-face, woman-to-woman? Like, girl, what you gonna do when Sasha Banks comes for you? So yeah, that was a pretty interesting part. But Asuka and Sasha is going to be a really good match this Sunday at Survivor Series, because every match they wrestle against each other is always really good. They bring out the best in each other. So I'm really excited about that. So that's pretty much all that happened with the women, outside of Aaliyah sort of being at ringside to support Murphy in his match with Seth Rollins. But I'll get into that a little bit later. So SmackDown started, I think, because I was just coming in the house. SmackDown started with Big E and the Street Profits having an encounter backstage, which led to them having their tag team match, where it was the New Day and the Street Profits versus Robert Roode, Dolph Ziggler, King Corbin, and Sami Zayn. And after the promo, the match took place because all of the heels came out, to get into the New Day's face, but then the Street Profits came out and saved them. And then there was this really impressive part where Kofi Kingston hit a crossbody from the top rope and then accidentally hit Montez Ford, which caused issues between the teams, sort of feeding into that feud. And then despite the miscommunication, the Street Profits were able to hit the victory with Montez Ford hitting his patented amazing from the heavens, as Corey likes to say, frog splash onto Sami Zayn, and they won the match. And then after they won the match, they held up their titles at each other to sort of prove, to sort of give off the impression that the both of them are going to give each other all kinds of heck Sunday. And I'm really excited. Here again in the tag team division, you have more black excellence here, so I'm really excited about that. Then we had a segment where Daniel Bryan was backstage getting ready to talk to Kayla, and Sami Zayn came out there, to try to confront him or whatever, but then Daniel Bryan pushed him down and shoved him to the ground. But then he left the area saying that Daniel Bryan was lucky he was focused on facing Bobby Lashley at Survivor Series. But then Daniel Bryan went on to have his interview talking about his issues with Roman Reigns lately, and Jey Uso after being attacked by Jey Uso after their Survivor Series qualifying match several weeks ago. And he kept saying that it wasn't going to be personal, because Jey Uso said it wasn't personal, that it was just, I guess business or family business or whatever. And Daniel Bryan was talking about how upset he was, how he had to come home after being attacked and watching his daughters, cry every time, she saw him or something like that. And it was just kind of sad to hear, because if anything Daniel Bryan is good at, he's good at making you feel sorry for him as babyface and make you feel like he's going to come at you and get back at you for whatever it is that you may have done to him. So that was really cool. Then we had Adam Pearce, announcing that Otis and Bayley were going to be on the teams. And Otis was back there, notably, with Chad Gable, who's now taking on this sort of dastardly trainer attitude backstage. It hasn't translated to an in-ring component just yet because he hasn't had a match since he's had this character change from Shorty G. But I guess now he's training Otis to sort of be his best self. So I guess now he's going to sort of, show himself approved in the Team SmackDown match against Team Raw for the men. So that's still an interesting component to look at, there. Then we had the match between Murphy and Seth Rollins, which was absolutely amazing here. Murphy came to the ring escorted by Aaliyah, his girlfriend, and the Mysterio family before being jumped by Seth Rollins at the start of the match. Then there was a point where Seth, was attacking Murphy, and he tied him up in the ropes, and he tried to grab a kendo stick from under the ring, but then Rey Mysterio wasn't having it and saying, "You're not going to beat up my future son-in-law." So then he didn't say that. I just said that because I'm goofy. Seth Rollins then attacked Rey, and then he attacked Dominic before Murphy freed himself, only to be knocked down to the floor by Rollins, who then began to stalk Aaliyah as she fell to the ground like he was gonna do something to her. And I'm just thinking like, bro, what you gonna do to this girl? What you gonna do? What are you gonna do to her? You're not gonna try it. Then the show went to commercial. Then they came back from commercial, and Seth Rollins and Murphy were back in the ring wrestling as normal. And then something that I thought was interesting was the fact that Seth hit his Falcon Arrow, and usually that's a finisher, but Murphy kicked out of that. And then Rollins then tried to hit him with a stomp, and then he also kicked out of that too. But then finally, Murphy was able to hit an incredibly impressive and crisp looking Murphy's Law in order to win the match. And I think that is so amazing and important for somebody like, Buddy Murphy, because he was the cruiserweight champion, a couple years ago, but a lot of people don't ever mention that anymore. And I think that sucks, but he really was a cruiserweight champion, and he was always labeled, as the best kept secret. And I remember seeing him, wrestle at NXT when he was there, and he had broken free of that tag team and stuff. And he was just absolutely amazing. And I always wanted him to do more. So now he has this opportunity to do more, as a wrestler, but then also as a person who's, I guess, a face now, with the Mysterios and having that rub with the Mysterios and having that sort of romance. And they all celebrated, after the match was over. And then Sasha Banks came out and interrupted them, much to my dad's chagrin, because he doesn't like it when people get interrupted. So, so that was really good. But something that I did find interesting that I did mention in News and Gossipish was the fact that they think that there's supposed to be a wedding angle between Aaliyah, Mysterio, and Murphy. And I'm here for that because I just need me a wedding, because I haven't been to any weddings this year. So I just want to see a wedding. So after that, Drew McIntyre and Roman Reigns had their Survivor Series contract signing. And then Drew McIntyre came out, not dressed in a kilt, but dressed in regular clothes. And Roman Reigns came out, and then they sat down at the table with Adam Pearce in the ring, sort of mediating that. And then Paul Heyman was in the ring with them as well. And they sat down, and then Reigns walked to the ring and then took a lengthy pause at the bottom of the ramp, and then again at the ring steps. But then he forced Adam Pearce to move his seat so that he was able to take the chair at the head of the table, because I'm the head of the table. So whatever. Then Reigns stared down Drew McIntyre, and McIntyre was basically saying that he was going to, beat him and give him, the fight of his life and all that. And then he signed the contract. Then before Roman signs the contract, he stares at him, and basically tells him that he knew that he was going to beat Randy Orton on Raw to win the championship. But he also said that for a long time, Drew McIntyre has always been the right guy at the right place at the wrong time. And Drew McIntyre said he knew he was gonna try to get in his head like that, but you just want me to flip a table, and punch and beat you up before the match, because that's usually how contract signings go. And then McIntyre said, he was just going to do what he was told and show up and, and just show up and beat him. But then Reigns told McIntyre that he's only a secondary champion and a prop, while Reigns is the champion and the face of the promotion. I'm the face of the WWE. I'm the head of the table. I'm the actual champion. And he then said that one day Drew McIntyre will love him for the lessons that he taught him, and that he will love him right back, because McIntyre will always be his favorite number 2. And I was just like, just seeing Roman Reigns' body language, how he was smiling at Drew, basically looking at him and undermining him, at every turn. It's just like Roman Reigns is just the Samoan mob boss of the WWE. And he was just sitting there at the head of the table saying, you know what? Once this experience is over, you're going to love me and I'm going to love you too. But I'm going to beat you because you're going to always be the number 2 dude, and it's just like, oh my God, like, it's just so evil, but it's so delicious at the same time. Roman Reigns is probably the best heel they have. He's the best heel right now in WWE. It's crazy. It's so crazy, because I never thought that he would ever be heel, but now that he is, it's one of the most welcoming things that that's just happened this year. And I also thought it was interesting how they didn't even talk with microphones too. But I felt like it added to the drama of the moment, and the intensity of the moment, because they were staring down each other and everything. I was just like, this fits the exact vibe that they're trying to give, like, I love this. I love everything Roman is doing. I love everything Drew is doing. This is going to be a great match, y'all. The Battle of the Beefcakes. I'm ready. So, and it didn't divulge into a brawl like the contract signings tend to do. So the main event was Daniel Bryan versus Jey Uso. And Jey Uso didn't waste any time, in the match before snapping off on him. But then he took Bryan outside of the ring and then cleared off the announce table. But then Bryan was able to fire back before Jey Uso could put the table to any type of use, much to the horror of Corey Graves and Michael Cole. Shout out to them. They do such a good job. Then Jey Uso, did a back body drop on Daniel Bryan through the table minutes later. And then Bryan was still dealing with injuries, to his kidney from Uso's prior attack a couple weeks ago. And then he tried to lock in a label lock, but then Uso retaliated by hammering him, in the injured kidneys. But then after eating a series of super kicks, I thought Jey Uso was going to win this match based off of the amount of super kicks he was giving Daniel Bryan alone. Daniel Bryan got his knees up on a splash from Jey Uso and rolled him up for the win. And this is where I really felt like, well, I believe they're on Team SmackDown together. This isn't going to work. And I also feel like Jey Uso probably got his butt torn out from under him by Roman Reigns. He was like, you made the family look like a fool. Like, I'm pretty sure he's going to get into Jey Uso's face. So I was like, bro, you messed this up. And that's pretty much all that happened on SmackDown. And now we're going to go to the conclusion. All right, so thank you for listening to this episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. As you know, you can follow me on Instagram at Hardy Wrestling Podcast, and you can follow me at Hardy Wrestle Pod. I want to send a special thank you shout out to Devin Christianson for coming on my show, and I hope that he has nothing but success in his referee / commentator / ring announcer life. And I just want to thank all of my listeners for sticking with me, throughout this time. I know it's the holiday season and I know there's still a lot of stuff going on with the pandemic and everything, but I thank you so much for listening to my show and for giving me a chance to introduce you to this crazy world that I'm in love with. I'm still selling my Chill, Positive, and Passionate t-shirts in the colors of black and white, sizes small through extra large for $20. So if you want that t-shirt, I can post it on my socials so you can see it again. And you can, message me if you want one. So thank you so much for listening to this show. I hope you're having a fantastic weekend, and I hope you have definitely a fantastic Thanksgiving if you do celebrate that. And if you don't, that's fine too, because I totally get why. And I just hope you're, being your best self this week, and you're keeping yourself healthy and safe, and you're just, being productive and doing what you can do to make the world a better place. And if you're not being productive, I just hope you're taking care of yourself and resting and doing whatever it is you need to do to, charge your batteries, because who can change the world on an empty battery? Nobody. So I just hope you're staying safe and being your best self, as this is going on. So this has been the Hardy Wrestling Podcast, your favorite chill, positive, and passionate wrestling vibes show. And until next time, bye, y'all.